Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, Igniting Leadership Excellence. This is episode number 46. I'm Rick, and unfortunately, today, due to a scheduling conflict, my co host Emily could not be with us. Today, we have Jerry Maclin with us, and I should add, folks, that you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. If you have listened over these last few episodes, you know that we have interviewed folks that are not connected with the fire service in any way, shape, or form. However, what they have to say is definitely applicable to leadership in the fire service, and it's applicable across the board to leadership. So I'll read Jerry's bio here. Jerry is known as the Ascension Coach. He is a retired U.S. Army officer, former senior pastor, and the author of 8 books. With 22 years of military service and more than a decade in ministry, Jerry has forged a reputation as a dynamic speaker, author, and spiritual performance coach. His mission is to equip people to rise above pain, break limitations, and unlock their divine potential. Through his books, signature coaching frameworks like the Ascension Mindset and Spirit OS, and his growing digital platforms, Jerry delivers a powerful blend of spiritual truth, practical systems, and leadership insights designed to help people live with clarity, resilience, and impact. Jerry, thank you very much for coming and welcome.
Thank you for having me, my friend. It's a pleasure to be with you. Pleasure.
Yeah, you know, your bio there, that certainly does not encompass your entire life. Could you fill in some of the blanks that are not contained in your bio?
Wow. I've been married now for 18 years.
Hey,
That's one.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. I have 4 children. Um, I I've been to combat multiple times. My wife, as well as a retired Army officer as well. She did 21. I did 22. Um, Bronze Star, Combat Action Badge. All those things. And I'm really passionate about leadership. I'm really passionate about the idea of inspiring people to be great in what God created them to be.
Wow, that's great. And so you were a warrant officer, correct?
Yes, I was. Yes.
Okay. For our listeners who are not familiar with the military, and for those who may have not heard my background in the past, I'm also a military veteran. I had 9 years of service. But Jerry, for people who are not familiar with the military and the military rank structure, could you talk about what a warrant officer is and the role of a warrant officer?
Sure. A warrant officer is, we used to call them, they're called quiet professionals because they come from enlisted background. Most, probably about 95% of warrant officers transition from being enlisted or senior enlisted. I myself, I was a sergeant first class, E7, before I transitioned over.
Okay.
Normally, to be a warrant officer, which is a technical field, of course, you have pilots, you have a warrant officer pilots, but in my specific and my wife and I specific area of expertise, we were master logisticians. And so we moved in from senior positions enlisted to move to being an officer. Commands generals love warrant officers because we kind of bridge the gap. We're
Mm.
not from West Point. We're from the rank and file. We're from the platoon. We're used to being gritty, and then we transition over. And now we bring that mentality, that hard work, that hybridization into the officer world. And so they call us the quiet professionals or the SMEs, the subject matter experts, because we normally are the one person that the general or the colonel can turn to and say, hey, how do I make this happen?
Mhm.
And because we understand both sides, we're able to give the right apothecary or solution to help them get their mission accomplished.
Yeah, that's great. And from my time in the military, uh, Air Force, and then over to the Marine Corps, seeing certainly in the Marine Corps warrant officers, but also I have a friend that goes to our church. He's what in the Marine Corps we referred to as a Mustang. He had been enlisted as a sergeant, got out, went to college, and then he came back in as a commissioned officer, and he retired out as a major. And from my time in the service, looking at warrant officers such as yourself or Mustangs, it was, what it's like because you've been there. you've been out in the trenches, you've been out in the workforce. You know what it's like to be an enlisted man and your wife and an enlisted woman, in the military, and that goes a long ways. It certainly goes a long way in the fire service as well. And so there's a lot of similarities between the military and the fire service. Could you talk a little bit about your leadership path in the Army?
Sure. It's interesting because I was a person who gravitated to natural leaders. I love people who lead. And so when I originally came in the military in 1994, it was my senior year. I joined as a reservist,
Mm,
and I fell in love with the culture of the military, so much so that when I came back after summer reserve, I decided once I graduated I was going to go on active duty.
mm, okay.
When I first came in, I was, of course, like all military, you come in as maybe like a private or PFC or something like that. I began there. Then I started to really excel. I met a leader, and we all should, if you're a person who loves leadership, you got to have somebody in your life that really
Mm,
inspired you to want to be. And there was a man by the name, his name was Staff Sergeant Larry Breland. And he was a man that I met that really inspired me. He was my squad leader, and he just taught me and pushed me and challenged me to be great. The boards, back in the old army, I don't know if they still do it now, but there used to be promotion boards where you had to compete
okay.
where you had to pass certain tests and physical fitness marksmanship, and then you had to do it academically as well. And so my rise happened with falling in love with a leadership style, someone who's
Mm,
displayed it to me, and I started to. It's funny because I didn't grow up with a dad. So this man, outside of my grandfather, this man, Larry Breland, was really like a father figure to me. And I started to, it's funny, it's funny, Rick. I started to dress like him. I you know, I started to modify my uniform because there were certain things you could do with the uniform. You could blouse the pants a certain way and so on. And he inspired me so the way I shined my boots, the way I stood. He was such an instrumental part for my growth and my development, and he really inspired me to want to be a leader because he was a great husband, great father, great mentor, and he was physically fit. I mean, he was always obedient to those above him. He was always positive and very constructive, and so that kind of started me on my leadership journey. After a while, once I kept competing in the boards, because you move from E1 all the way up.
Mhm.
Once you get to E6, the rest is centralized promotion, which means it's about your record, and then the Department of the Army decides whether or not you can ascend. But from E1 to E6, what Larry Breland showed me changed my life.
Mm,
It changed my
okay.
life. It made me very competitive. It made me want to be proud of responsibility. He inspired me to want to be in charge. I know in that world sometimes people don't want to be in charge, but
Mhm.
he ignited something in me that made me want to be in charge. I wanted to take the bullets. I wanted to take the heat. I wanted to take responsibility. And so that started on my journey. I made it to E6 really fast because of his inspiration and how he pushed me. I ended up in Korea. I made Sergeant First Class on my first look. That's
Wow.
really, really impressive. That's really, really difficult to do. But I credit Sergeant Breland for that. And then I became a senior NCO. Then I fell in love with this woman, and but I couldn't marry her. I couldn't do it because we were not the same rank.
Mm,
And so what happened was I had to transition over to be a warrant officer. So we didn't date. It was just all communication and everything. And then all of a sudden I prayed about it. I asked God, I said, hey, listen, I really like this woman. I really want to be with her. If it's your will for me to spend the rest of my life with her, let me put in this one officer packet. And at this time, Rick, I got to tell you,
mm.
it was very difficult for sergeant first classes to transition over to be warrant officers.
Oh, okay.
And so I stepped out on faith. I put the packet in, just like sergeant first class. I got selected on the first look. I got selected on the first look to be a warrant officer. And it was funny because it was like four something in the morning. I was going in for PT. I kind of go early because I used to work out at the gym and then go to do PT
Mm,
with people in my unit. And I'll never forget, I was in my office and she was like miles away down the road in her office because she used to go in early too. And she sent me an email. She said, "I want you to look at this." And I was like, "I'm not going to look at it because I don't want to be disappointed." And my name was on there,
mm,
and I got selected. And so a year later, we got married, and it just really the idea of leadership in this whole process for me started with Larry Breland. Um,
mm,
it transitioned over to moving from enlisted to being a tech officer, which is a chief, which is an Army One officer, which fits my personality because I like to focus on a specific thing.
okay.
And doing that allows me to be the best I can be.
Mm,
And so a lot of times in leadership, as you know, sometimes we have staff and we have people on our team, and sometimes we have them doing things that they're not great at. And if you're not doing something that you're
yeah.
great at, you lack passion.
Hmm.
And so the beauty of a one officer, I got a chance to actually do something that I love to do. I got to focus in on it. I get to be the best version of myself while leading a staff, leading a team, and making sure that my command is successful in their mission.
Yeah, that's great. Was Sergeant Brealey still in when you picked up warrant officer?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. I remember reaching out to him and just thanking him.
Mm,
And even it's funny that you mentioned him because when I was young, because I joined the military when I was 17, Rick,
mhm.
17. And I was young. I used to always talk about God all the time. I used to talk about one day I'm going to be this pastor. I'm going to be writing books and I'm going to be changing people's lives. And it's funny, we hadn't talked because, of course, in the military, you travel and go different places. I
Yeah.
deployed, and we kind of lost contact. But one day, I reached out to him on social media and I thanked him. And I said, I want to thank you for what you've done for me. And he looked me up. I had been retired, I think, for maybe a couple years. And he had saw that I had been writing books. And he said to me, he says, I knew this was in you the whole time. I always knew that you were going to do this.
Mm.
And so it really touched me and it really made me feel appreciated because this was someone who knew me when he knew what was in me before everybody else did. And
Yeah.
he pushed me and he challenged me. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I have lost the name of this individual. It was one of my first sergeants when I was still new in the military, in E3, and I had a roommate in the barracks uh, tap into my bank account. He got into my locker, got into my checkbook. I didn't know it until my bank statement arrived. And believe it or not, Jerry, this guy's name was Charlie Brown. Really, Charlie Brown.
The irony, right?
Yeah. And so my bank statement comes, and that's the days when you would get your canceled checks. And I'm
Uh-huh.
going through, it's like, Charlie Brown. You know, I didn't write any checks to Charlie Brown, and there was a bunch of them, and it about tapped out my bank account. And so, I went to the first sergeant, and by that time, Charlie Brown was already in jail because he had stolen a guy's guitar down the hall and went out, typical military fashion, the pawn shop right outside the
Yes.
gate, the first pawn shop. So this guy goes, steals the guitar, goes to the first pawn shop. They call the cops. The guy's arrested. So he's in
Uh-huh.
jail when I discover this. I call the first sergeant. And he says, well, he said, he's been arrested. There's going to be a trial. It's going to be a long time before you can get that money back. And I said, first sergeant, I says, I've got some obligations that I have to take care of this month. And he said, well, all right, Davis, meet me over at the bank on base at 1300. And for those of you who are listening, you don't know what 1300 is. That's 1 p.m. I met him and he took me and he took money out of his own bank account, Jerry, and transferred it to mine so I would have that in there. And
Leadership.
and that just struck me as there he is, the first sergeant, the senior military man, the NCO, in our unit taking care of one of his junior enlisted men. And that's fantastic that there's leadership out there and like Sergeant Brealey in your life. And so the question I want to have is, and I loved that. And one of the other thing I want to add to Jerry, I love that you reached out to him and you let him No.
Yeah.
And something that I've learned in my life is, and folks, pay attention to this. You've got somebody that has impacted your life, like a Sergeant Breeley. Hunt them down and tell them and thank them. Don't wait until they're dead and you're at their funeral and you stand up and say they had this kind of impact. Let them know while they're alive. That's important. So, Jerry, what would be your definition of leadership?
Well, I gave 22 years to the military, and so I have to use the definition they gave me. I kind of mixed it up, I hybridized it with pastoral leadership as
Mm-hmm.
well, but it's really the process of influencing someone to accomplish something
Mm-hmm.
by providing purpose, motivation, and direction. That's how I define
Yeah, that's
leadership.
great.
And
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, yeah, I could expound on it
Yeah,
more, but I think
yeah.
I'd give you the definition for now. Yeah.
Well, no, that's absolutely great. It's short and it's succinct. And
Mhm.
we're going to talk a little bit here later about the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team. John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing more,
Yes. Yes.
nothing less. And hey, believe it or not, even though I was in the Air Force and the Marine Corps, I do read Army publications. I've read a lot of Army publications, and one of them that was updated this year was the Army released an updated version of Field Manual FM-1, the Army, a primer to our profession of arms. And I was going back through that, and in the section titled "What is a Warrior?" the manual reads, quote, "But the most basic element of our vocation is to execute violence on our country's behalf and to embody an ethos of toughness, resilience, and willingness to fight." I want to hone in on the ethos of toughness and resilience. Could you add to that and what you learned, throughout the years, even before the Army, while you're in the Army, coming out of the Army, about, toughness and resilience?
Toughness and resilience, number one, is something that every leader, every person who, whether you're a leader or manager, you've got to have. It's something that I believe, I spiritually, of course, my background.
Yeah.
I believe there's a spirit of leadership. There's something that comes with it. Leaders can be taught and developed, but there are certain people, Rick, that just have it. I,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
I believe John Maxwell just has it. There's just
Hmm.
certain people that's just born to lead, and that's it, period. You There's
Hmm.
nothing. They're not great at anything else in the world, but they are great at leading. But tenacity and resiliency is important for every leader to have because you're going to come up against situations and circumstances that your talent, that your skills will not be able to maneuver you
Mm.
over or through. You're going to have to go through things. You're going to have to be able to handle whatever comes along with it. I've always said that a leader doesn't have to be perfect, but they must be precise.
Hmm.
Precision is important because if you know where you're going, you know what you want to do, that means you're sure, and also it helps you deal with whatever comes along with the direction. So you can be tenacious, you can be driven, you can be resilient. I would be a fool if I suggested that I just woke up and realized this or I knew this. You have to sometimes fail in order to
Yes.
become perfected. And as
Hmm.
a military officer, as a senior enlisted, even as a pastor, I've made bad decisions throughout all. But I learn, I learn, I grow, I seek to be better. And so I will say this about resilience. It's something that is also learned.
Hmm.
You're not just given. Like I told you before, like John Maxwell, I've read most of his books, and we are both a part of the team. I know for a fact that there are just certain people that just have it. But some of us others, we have to learn it. We have to build it. We have to fall, get back up again.
Yeah.
We have to go through things in order to develop that level of resilience. And I want to add this before you comment again, Rick. There's something we learn in the military when you were young private and you're doing physical fitness for the first time at that level in basic
Hmm.
training. There's something that the drill sergeants always talk about is muscle memory. They'll
Yes.
always say that you're literally training your muscles to get used to the stress that we're putting you under. And that's how resiliency is built. Muscle memory, testing, trials. You develop what we call what is known as metal, not
Hmm.
metal, but metal. That grit, that thing inside of you
Yeah.
that you know that if you've I like how our Christian faith oftentimes purports that if God did it before, He'll do it again.
Mm.
It's almost as if that's what we have to, that's what we learn through resiliency inside of ourselves. We learn that, hey, if I went through something like this before, I'm built for it and I can actually endure it again. And so to me, that's why resilience is important. It's something that we have to explain to people that is going to take time to develop. But I
Hmm.
think if we prepare people for it, if we say, hey, listen, on this journey, you're going to have this bump, that bump. There's going to be things that happen to you that you're probably not ready for, but that's okay. God knew you would be able to handle it. So that means look at yourself the way he sees you, accomplish, conquering, and finish. That way, just learn the lesson and you'll get tougher and tougher and tougher as you go through the journey.
Yeah. As you're talking, Jerry, I'm reminded of two things. The first one out of the book of Philippians, you know, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And
Yes.
then from the resilience standpoint, also, uh, David, bang, popped in the mind, the story that's of David's life laid out there in the books of First Samuel and Second Samuel, and how he was identified to be the king, and Saul became jealous of him and tried to kill him multiple times. And certainly David was not a perfect individual. But
That's right.
later on, we read in the Bible he was a man after God's heart. And so that's resilience. That he kept that up. And folks, for those of you who listen that haven't been in the military, will you raise your right hand? We swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. And then, for all intents and purposes, we became property of the United States government.
Very true. Very true.
And you go off to boot camp, and if you don't like it, tough. Too
Yeah.
bad. You don't get to go home at the end of the night. You're there. You are captive. And if resilient, and I seen people drop out and fail out of
Mhm.
boot camp. They just frankly they could not handle it. They did not have that resilience. They did not have that perseverance. And it doesn't mean that we liked what happened, does it, Jerry?
Doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It, it's interesting because today, while we're recording this, today the new Secretary of War
Hmm.
unveiled before the world the new policies of the military, the new direction that it's going in. And one of the things he was adamant about was the idea of standards, the idea of
Yeah.
competition, the idea the military we came from, the
Mm.
one we grew up in. And those standards are going to cause many people to fail, but this is the true test of a true leader. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do to what happens to you.
Oh.
I wonder how many people are diamonds in the rough who don't realize that just because you fell short, it doesn't mean that you're disqualified. It just
Mm.
means you've got to make the adjustments.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
the right adjustments. And my prayer for people who are this new military that's coming up, for any leaders at any level, that you do not allow a failure to define you. It's
Hmm.
what happened to you, but it's not who you are. And so this perseverance and this resiliency that we all need is so critical because they're going to go through the basic training like we went through, Rick. They're going to
Hmm.
go through the stuff where because he even announced today that they're going to allow them to be like the old drill sergeant where they can inspire
Mm.
with their hands. Drill sergeants can use their hands again and they're not going to put any limits on profanity or what they call harsh words. They're really bringing it back to the 60s, 70s, and the 80s.
That's
And
good.
it's going to really put the modern person in a mental crucible. They're going to have to get used to difficult times. And I think, Rick, it's going to produce diamonds all across our country, across our forces, and young men and young women who, like me, didn't even know what was trapped on the inside. that
Yeah.
pressure, that challenge, that thing. All of a sudden, it's funny, Rick. My mother always tells this story that when I came back home from basic training, she didn't recognize me. But the truth was, it wasn't a physical thing. Somebody introduced me to a version of myself that only struggle, stress, and pain could produce. And I found him. And he was always there. I just needed somebody to push me in the right direction.
Yeah. Hey, and for our listeners who are absolutely shocked that that's the direction that the military is going in, hey, listen, folks. It's the United States military, and we have enemies out there. Jerry has served in a combat zone, and he was in places where the other people wanted to kill him, and kill his companions, and kill every American that was over there. And when the military turns soft, and if the military is producing soft soldiers, soft Marines, soft sailors, soft airmen,
Right.
then that gives our enemies an advantage. And we just don't. And Jerry, I've seen this transition in fire academies over the years as
Mhm.
well, to where I had the opportunity to run the very first morning of a regional fire academy, and our fire chief had come to me and wanted me to do it because I'd been a sergeant in the Marine Corps. And I said, yeah, absolutely. But now talking, to people who are involved in the training, it's soft. It's soft training. And holy moly, it's firefighting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, Rick, I have a theory about this,
Hmm,
and my wife and I talk about this often. It's funny, we were watching the news today, watching a press conference with the Secretary of War,
hmm,
Hegseth. And it's funny because I'm always explaining to her that I think that sometimes we think that war fighting requires a level of mental sophistication. And I don't think it does when it comes to something as simple as he hates me, I've got to defeat him.
hmm.
It's you tap into this level of survival. Now, of course, as you mature and you get into different circumstances, as you know, it requires a level of sophistication. But at the base construct of it, it's me or them.
Yeah,
It's me or them.
yeah.
I got a story. If you got time to tell you a story that
Oh,
happened to me.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
True story. I'm a chief. I'm having to. This was in. I think it was my last deployment. I was in Kirkuk. I'm having to fly to different bases to check on some of my guys. There's some stuff they got going on. The colonel wanted some stuff done, and I had transitioned the first armor division into the first striker division.
Mm,
Now, this happened in combat. So we arrived in country as a heavy brigade. In country, we moved all that equipment over to an organization in Afghanistan, and then we became a striker brigade. So I had no sleep. I was just stressed out like crazy. So I'm having to go to all these bases to make sure that the proper equipment and so on is moved to the proper place. So I'm zooming. I don't think we had Zoom back then. I can't remember what it was, but I was communicating with my wife. I was like, "Hey, sweetie, listen, I won't be able to speak to you for a couple of days because I'm going to be, base hopping." She says, "Okay, sweetie, we do our little prayer." And so I said, "But I'll be back in like 2 days. I'll come back and we'll be able to watch our little
mm,
FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it was." And what happened was the last day, Rick, I'm picked up. They say, "Chief, you ready?" They pick me up on the bird. It's late at night because at that time you didn't travel during the day. Of course, you traveled at night.
mhm,
And we travel at night, and I'm so excited to get back. I'm tired, and all of a sudden on the radio, they're like, "Hey, Chief, it's just me on the bird with the pilots and a gunner." And he says, "Hey, sir, we got some enemies below us, and we're gonna have to engage the new policy that you have to engage." I'm like, "Well, why we engage? It's just fly through." He's like, "No, sir. The general says that's the policy we have to engage." I'm on this thing, Rick. I'm like, Lord Jesus, I'm headed home. I'm headed to see my wife. It's been days since I've talked to her. I don't need things to go wrong like this. So immediately, this young man, and I can't remember where it was. I think he was from like Wisconsin somewhere.
Mm.
Young guy. And I'll never forget they were shooting at us, and they turned around and he says, "Don't worry about it, Chief. I promise you, this will be very, very quick." And they swung it around and they dealt with that enemy so swiftly that it was so smooth and such a transition. He was like, "Don't worry about it. We're finished." And then we head on. And the reason why I tell this story is because I was prepared for that moment, but when you're actually in the moment, you have to remind yourself that you've been trained for it, that the people that you're working with are built for it just like you. And I had to briefly trust these people that they were going to get me back
Mm.
safely,
Mhm.
and that in a combat environment like any high expectation environment, you're expected to perform. And these young men, I wish I knew them because I would they saved my life basically because it could have went the other way, you know. But they performed at a high level under stress. Under stress.
Mm.
I was the cargo that they were carrying. And they performed at a high level under stress and dispatched our enemies swiftly. And so that's just another sign of resilience, man, that
Yeah,
I think that
that's great. We may have some brand new firefighters listening out there who you have not yet responded to your first bona fide structure fire. You've gone through live fire training in the academy,
Mhm.
and it's not the same thing as
It's
something
not the
that's burning
same.
in a house or a commercial structure there. Listen to what Jerry is saying and take that as encouragement. Rely on your training, rely on the crew, rely on the other people that are responding on that incident, and it will begin to come naturally to you. And Jerry, this is a great segue because where I wanted to go next here is you're talking about flying out. You had that transition to a striker brigade, and you're checking on your people. That's team. So I'm going to read another segment from FM-1 quote. As a leader, you must actively help build strong teams and nurture strong culture. And so, the fire service, the military, has a strong culture, it has teams. How did you go about building your teams and fostering a culture that where people were working together, not against each other, but yet still aligned with the mission of the Army?
It's interesting because my wife and I, we both adopted the same leadership structure, style, and team building that we used in our individual missions in the military. We brought it to ministry.
Hmm.
And number one, what we do is we always put people in positions that they're great at. If we
Yeah.
if we can, we always prefer that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things we do is you want to know how you see yourself, how you value yourself. Like where are you? In this process, as a chief who ran what they call the property book office, I was responsible for billions of dollars. I was the person that got all the weapons, the guns, the planes, and I was responsible for managing all of them. That's what I do. And so I had a staff of maybe sometimes between 3 to 7, depending on the mission. And I would always pick people because in the military, you can't really pick your team,
Yeah.
but you can train them to retrofit the mission that you have or what your needs are. And so what I would do is I would develop a certain type of standardized mentality that I would use. I would say, okay, I need someone that, first of all, I always need someone that can be an extension of me.
Hmm.
So what I would do is I would always find out of the five that one person that I know that could actually represent me because as a chief, I'm always busy. I'm never in my office. I'm always in a meeting with the colonel. I'm always across the base. I'm always somewhere. So I need that one person. Normally, it's your senior NCO that works alongside you.
Hmm.
That's a representation of me. So I put that one person as me. It makes me omnipresent to a certain extent.
Ah.
right? So then I'm there. Then I that person has to have a managerial mentality, meaning that they don't want to control. What they want to do is inspire and put people in positions to be great at what they're doing. So what I would always do is I would always have a person, I outline the task. Okay, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. And this is what you're always going to do. I always do that initially because I want people to perfect their lane. You have to be able to perfect your lane. In order to build a team, you have to have people who they are, know what they are, because guess what, Rick? If you don't know who you are and what you are, then you don't recognize your own value. And if you don't
Oh,
recognize your own value, you don't recognize your own value to the team.
hmm.
So I need you to be proficient. I need you to love being proficient. I need you to like doing what you do. So I tried to always put people in the right place. And I had a little leeway as the only one of my kind in my organization who did what I did. I had access to leadership where I could always go and say, hey, maybe this person's not right for what we're doing here. The tempo
Uh-huh.
might be too much. Let's move them down to the unit, or let's can I get somebody else or whatever like that. But a majority of the time, I always built people or put them in a position based upon their proficiency and that inspiration they kept within themselves to be great at it. So I would
Yeah.
have that along across the line. I would always push consistency. It's one thing as a leader and personally, I'm not a fan of is inconsistency.
Hmm. Yes.
If you're going to show up, show up. Let's get it done. And I need you to be. I'm a big fan of sports. I don't know if you're a sports guy.
Somewhat. Yeah.
So what? I'm a big fan of Jordan, Kobe, Tom
Mhm.
Brady, Ray Lewis. These are people who are obsessed about being great at what they do.
Mhm.
And I always like to inspire my people to be obsessed with their specific lane. And so that's how you build a team. It's more to it, obviously, but I
Yeah.
would focus on that. You be great at this, you be great at that. And then early on in the first couple of months, I would not let them cross pollinate. I would not let them cross over in any other mission.
Mm.
I would just keep them tunneled in that specific area. So by the time maybe 6 months down the road and we're ready to case in point, my last deployment, um, I had staff moving in and out as we were getting ready to deploy. So I didn't have a lot of time. And then I had to go on advance party before everybody else to get things established over there and then come back. So
Mm.
it was
Yeah.
so many moving parts going on. And so I was able to get people that could focus on their lane. We had equipment coming from this base, coming from that base, while simultaneously removing equipment, sending it somewhere else. We had so much, and then we had people at the unit who were our customers, and all customers are not always user friendly.
Mhm.
So you had to deal with that component of it. Yeah,
Mm.
it's so many different things going on, all while being in a war zone. So I always focus on team building based upon their expertise, their skill sets. I try to develop and teach people because I'm a teacher by heart. I want you to master your lane, master your job so you
That's
can
great.
value to the team and bring value to yourself.
Yeah, that's great. There's a challenge that you identified that comes along with the military, certainly in the fire service.
Mhm.
And I suspect, and the same thing in law enforcement as well. And, Jim Collins wrote the book, Good to Great. And he has said, get the right people on the right bus going the right direction. Well, that's hunky dory.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a
The
brick
pipe
and
dream, right?
mortar, yeah, you got a brick and mortar business and you're the owner and you can hire and fire yeah, the people you could pick. Not in our professions.
Yeah.
I never, when I got promoted to battalion chief, it's like, okay, here you are, this is your shift. I didn't get to say to my operations chief, well, no, I don't want him. I want her. It didn't work that way. So you got it. The challenge that exists in environments like what you're describing in the military and fire, and I don't want to speak out of turn towards police, but I suspect it's the same way is
Mhm.
like here they are, they're coming out of the recruit academy, you got them or you get promoted, bang, hey, this is your unit, you gotta work with them. And now it's like they are there, and so the challenge comes with the team is you have to mold that team to get them going in the right direction because they're already on the bus.
but thus the definition of leadership I gave you some time ago when we first started talking. The process of influencing someone to accomplish a mission by providing purpose, motivation, and direction.
Yeah.
The true beauty of true leadership, in my estimation, Rick, is that you can take someone who has no consciousness of their value, what they can do, how talented they are. You take you take that person, give them purpose, give them
Mhm.
identity, inspire them, and they take it and they blossom like a butterfly. They go through the metamorphosis and then they stand and be great and be a master and proficient at that. To me,
Yeah.
that's the sign of true leadership.
Yeah,
That's
I agree. Yeah, Jerry, in my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, I have a chapter on disappointment. And I
Mhm.
touch on the fact that sometimes people, they're labeled as difficult, they're labeled as a troublemaker, and then, I look at it, it's like, okay, what is it in their life? Because what my experience has been, yeah, sure, they're, and I had a couple that were very, very, difficult, and then
Mhm.
they never changed. But what I've also seen is some of those ones that get labeled that way, something has happened along the line. And typically what I have seen is they have been a threat to somebody,
Yeah.
and so they're held down, and then they've got that personality that where they start speaking up more and so forth like that. And I've said more than one time, I would rather have had a shift of 10 troublemakers than 50 fair-haired golden children.
You know, because you're a leader, though, Rick. See, a leader. This is the thing. This is why I'm so obsessed with leadership and spiritual leadership,
Mhm.
really, as well as natural leadership, Rick. Because a true leader sees a person finished,
Yes.
not where they are. So our responsibility as leaders is to say, hey, I see right now you're a one. But I see the tenacity, the grit, the drive, the focus, the confidence. You just don't know what to do with all this talent that you have.
Mhm.
You know about Michael Jordan and the Bulls when they won all those championships.
Yeah. Yeah.
The architect behind it was Phil Jackson.
Mm.
He brought a philosophy to think about it. Jordan was already scoring 30, 40 points when Phil Jackson showed up, but they weren't winning. What Phil Jackson was he brought in a system. Leaders bring systems in to get the best out of their talent.
Mm.
That's what leaders do. He already had Scottie Pippen, he already had Jordan, and Jordan was just running around shooting a lot of shots. But what Phil Jackson did was he said, he brought in a guy by the name of Tex Winters. And Tex Winters was this architect of this certain style of offense or this system offense called the triangle. And the way it worked was you got to have a dominant player within the triangle, right? And that dominant player feeds other people because the dominant player always appears to be a threat to everyone else.
Mm.
Phil Jackson said Michael Jordan is that dominant player. I'm going to put him in that position and everybody's going to worry about him. And when they worry about him, everybody else will get a piece. And that's how we'll become a great team. Now, that's just basketball. But if you look at the logic behind it, he fit his system to his personnel.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
That's what leaders do. Leaders say, okay, you're good at this. You're good. I know you like this, but you're not as great as it is the other person. Let's switch. You get over here. You get over here. Let's maximize our abilities in this section so we can be great at it. So I'm a big proponent of systems, of logical systems that fit a team, that fit people. And sometimes, Rick, as you know this, sometimes we have to carry a load extra until we get the right team, until we
Yes.
get the
Yeah.
right people. But at the end of the day, our system has to remain focused and it has to be used because over time, like the Bulls, for a while, the first year they were struggling. Jordan had to learn how to be a better teammate. He was
Mm.
used to taking all the shots. He had to learn how to pass the ball. He had to learn how to do things that he wasn't wired to do. But once true. Again, as you can tell by now, I love sports. There was an interview. There was an interview from The Last Dance. This is a series that the Bulls did about all the championships. And there was an interview where Phil Jackson and Jordan was talking. And no, excuse me, let me rephrase that. It was Kobe Bryant. I apologize, not the Bulls, because Phil Jackson also coached the Lakers. He said that Kobe was so obsessed with being Michael Jordan that he had a conversation with him, and he says, "What I need you to do, Kobe, is trust your teammates.
Mm.
You trust them, you'll be like Jordan. Trust in them, inspire them, believe them." And what Kobe started doing was, instead of yelling at them and holding them to a standard that he was at, he started to accept them for where they were and what they are, and the confidence that he shared with them lifted them up, and they became great in their own right, and that's how they won those 5 championships.
Wow, that's great, Jerry. I definitely want to be able to touch on your post army life and
Mhm.
career. And
Sure.
we had a good talk when we were leading up into this about that transition coming out of the United States Army or any other branch in the military, and it certainly applies to long-term career, whether it's fire, police, EMS, people who spend a lifetime in a service-oriented career. And there are struggles with leaving. Could you touch on that? Here it is. You're done. You're out now. You don't have, it's very similar. What am I going to wear today? Things like that. Could you talk about some of those struggles and that transition coming out of the army into civilian life?
Well, um, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine named Curtis, he was like me, a chief. He retired and he took a job at a bank, a high level job at a bank. And he struggled to mesh into the culture because he was used to execution. He wasn't used to excuses. He wasn't used to any other option but being great. He was just used to performing, and his team around him was performing. And so he had to quit because he couldn't. His
Mm,
exact words was he couldn't work with civilians. That was his that was his line. But I said that to say this. You have to make sure as you transition, because I went through this. You have to make sure that what you choose to do will help you feel comfortable about what you used to do.
mm,
Um, I see veterans all the time. They get into fields because of financial reasons or all these other things. Because when you're leaving the services, you're used to consistency. You're used to order. Excuse me, Rick. They're used to structure. They're used to knowing the person next to them is obligated to do the best for the team.
mhm,
So when you transition, you have to make sure you get some victories. And what I mean by this is this: put yourself in environments that are close to where you came from, where if you're going to work in the work field, in the workforce, you got to put yourself in environments where people have high aptitude, where they care about their job if you can help it.
uh-huh,
Um, Also, you have to make sure that you take some time, and I'm a big proponent of counseling and therapy and coaching and mentoring. The transition is hard because, as I told you, you got to realize my wife and I were waking up at 4:30 for 22 years.
mm,
When I retire, I had to adjust to the idea that nobody's making me get up. Nobody's requiring me, right? Nobody's requiring me to do these things. I don't have a team that depends on me anymore. I don't have a uniform. Rick, you know this, the pride of wearing a uniform does
yes.
something to you mentally. In other words, it separates you from your home life. The moment
Mhm,
when I used to put my uniform on and get in my car, and the distance from my home to my job, it's like I turn on a switch. I transform to something else.
yes.
You lose that when you
Mhm,
transition. And what I find is many veterans are looking for identity and purpose. They're looking for a reason to exist. I was this in the military and now I don't have a purpose anymore. And this is when people fall into the depths of PTSD and
mhm,
stress and loneliness, and they feel like they feel orphaned by our system. And I think that if I was involved in the military aspect as far as like helping veterans transition, I would really recommend that the VA spends a lot of time focusing on identity after service,
Mm,
making it a
yeah.
priority. What can we help you be that will help you transition smoothly into this new, because it's a new culture, it's a new world. And
Yes.
so I went through it, my wife went through it, many of our friends have gone through it. Rick, it is a very stressful thing, but
Hmm.
I'm a positive person, and I believe in always providing solutions. And so here are my solutions. Number one, seek counseling because you're going to need it, because you're going into a new world. Number two, don't rush to choose a career field if you don't have to. Don't rush. If you do choose one, make sure it's one that you can be who you once were in. Because the mind, you know this, Rick, the mind doesn't just change like that.
That's
It,
right.
it has to be taught something over and over again.
Mm,
So if you can get in a situation where you can keep the same mentality, where your mind can be at ease, because habits, the word habit is where we get, it's the root of habitat.
mhm.
So we have to understand that our habits create the atmosphere that we have, not only outside of us, but also inside of ourselves, the way we see ourselves, the way we interact with other people. So I believe that you've got to make sure you pick the right career field afterwards.
Yeah, that's
Also,
good.
um, work on things like loving yourself, valuing yourself. That's why I would love to see the military do things like that, help veterans learn how to value their service,
Mhm.
value what they've done. I don't know how many people I've seen where they feel useless now.
Mhm.
Like, and there should be something where they are brought into this environment where, hey, where they're celebrated, like fostering environments where other veterans get together. And I know there's some small programs like that now, but I mean on a large scale, where, for example, I would do things like people who have the same career field. I would, if I was the veteran affairs, I would do things like I would have events for that specific for career field. Because there's certain things like you being a fire chief, there are certain things that at a certain level in the fire department that no other people know, but other people
Right.
who once carried your responsibility will know. Do
Mhm.
things like that, and there are many other things. But I think that to transition, the military, the government, the individual has to know that it's going to require an amazing culture shift. And we have to prepare our veterans for that culture shift. And I don't know if we're doing a great enough job. I know this new administration and this new Secretary of War, they're trying to do the best they can. And I believe the Secretary of the Army is the Honorable Collins. And he has a great reputation. So I'm hoping that they do that. But I know it's hard, veterans. For those of you who are watching, trust me, I've been there. I've been retired now for almost 9 years. Now, I retired in 2016. Um, I know what it feels like. I know the stress. I know you're wondering about your paycheck. I know you're wondering about, especially the cost of living. I would honestly tell you, do the natural things that you know how to do, but also do one thing: love yourself. Get yourself an environment where you can be appreciated, because you're going to need that to hold on to your self-esteem as you go through this difficult time of your life.
Yeah, that's great. And for our fire, police, EMS folks that are listening, you're approaching that time period of retirement or you have retired, it's going to be exactly the same thing that Jerry is talking about. You hang up the uniform, and I sure have access to the fire stations, but it's not the same as when
Yeah.
I was a battalion chief. It absolutely is not the same. And for those of us who believe in Jesus Christ, we must remember that that's where our identity lies, is in Christ. So
Yeah.
Jerry, now you're out and you're involved in ministry, and
Yeah.
you are the ascension coach. Tell us about that.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about the ascension coach.
It's interesting. I the concept of the ascension coach was something that I've always done, but I've never given it a moniker.
Mm,
The idea of it is, as a former senior pastor, as a former senior officer in the military, I've always, and even mentor to men, I've always saw a person finish, as I said earlier. I always look at what they could be, not where they are.
Mm,
And I'm always focused on getting the best out of them and helping them climb higher and higher and higher. And so the idea of the ascension coaching is something that I've focused on building. I'm building out programs as we speak of how to do this. And so I'm transitioning from the military, from ministry, and this is still ministry. I still call it ministry. It's
hmm
just that I'm broadening it to the world. I'm not just keeping it in this one specific direction. But ascension coaching basically, Rick, is the idea of helping someone become the version of themselves that they didn't know was there.
mm, that's great.
And as we do coaching calls, as we talk, as we develop, as we walk together, my job is to inspire you, help build framework around you, give you some language so you can understand. Because at the end of the day, we were all created for something great,
hmm
but we just don't know what that thing is. And
mm,
coaching and mentorship, our job is to help them find it and see it.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So you are an author of multiple books.
I am, I am, I am.
Tell us about that.
Well, one, I promised God, there's a covenant I made with God that I will give him 101 books before I go home. That's
Yeah,
my goal.
that's a
Uh,
lot.
I'm This covenant I made with God was made in 2020, and I've written 9 books since then.
Mm,
Um, I'm very
wow.
passionate. Say again.
I said, wow.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about writing. I'm very passionate about legacy, Rick. I'm very passionate. My book will live on beyond when I'm long gone. My books will
Mm,
live forever. The information that I was inspired by God to share with other people will live forever. I'm I love to write because it is basically a program that a person processes. When you read a book, you're reprogramming your mind. And I love being able to assist in people's reprogramming. And so I love to write. Um, I it's such a passion of mine. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I get when it comes to writing. Because I honestly believe, Rick, my mother used to, when I was young, she was always requiring me to read.
mm,
Read, 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 read. Um, and I fell in love with reading. And reading actually, it's the way that especially scriptures and books that are inspirational and motivational. What it does is the way the Lord designed the mind, it actually changes your imagination. I call it the image of nations
mm,
or a nation of images. And in other words, your mind can go to places where your body can't.
mm,
You can
mhm.
listen, you can live in different dimensions and realms of understanding and knowledge through reading. And so I love writing. I love helping people. As a matter of fact, I've I just have a book coming out next month that's going to be powerful. But I just had a book that just came out the other day, and it was written to men, and it's called The Starved Man.
Wow.
And I got a copy of it here, as a matter of fact. If I can show it, can I show it?
Yeah. Oh, please,
Uh,
please show it. Yeah.
it's called the. Can you see it in the camera? The Starved
Yeah. Starved
Man.
man.
Starved Man. And it says breaking free from spiritual starvation and reclaiming strength in Christ.
Mm,
As a man and having ministered to men, I used to do conversations, and I've been getting a lot of people asking me to bring them back. Years ago, I used to this thing called Conversations Concerning Men.
mm,
And I used to talk about the struggles of masculinity, especially in this modern world.
uh-huh.
But the book is hinged upon, Rick, that I recognize that everything in this planet is designed to turn men into weak, emotional, men that don't want leadership, who want to just go along for the ride. And the truth is, God designed men to be the opposite.
Yes.
We were designed to be the first ones to run into the building. We were designed
Mm,
to be the ones to protect and to cover and to do all those types of things. And I realized that the world system is designed to take that away from men
hmm
and to change the appetite. I mean, think about it, Rick. When we were in the military, do you remember the level of testosterone that existed? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. The same thing in the fire department.
Yeah, like do you remember the joy of competition, of competing, of striving for greatness?
Hmm.
We've lost that, and it's not by happenstance. It's by design. It's the weakening of what I call the first office. The first office is male. The first office in humanity. You have the first office for male and the first office is female. Before we were anything else, we were male and female. It's a certain
Hmm.
spirit and mentality that comes with that. And I think this book kind of speaks to that and other books that I've written. So yeah, I've written many. I'm still writing. I love writing, Rick. So I guess hopefully that
Yeah.
answers your
Well,
question.
that's great. That's great, Jerry. Hey, folks, and some of you, how in the world did you meet Jerry? Well, you've heard I'm part of the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team, and now Jerry is. And back in August, we were at what's called the IMC, the International Maxwell Certification. And on
Mhm.
Tuesday was the Live to Lead segment. So I'm standing outside the doors waiting to go in. And behind me, I hear a voice, which turned out to be Jerry's voice, to say, "Hey, are you part of the Maxwell team?"
Uh-huh.
And I turned around and met Jerry, met his wife, and we engaged in conversation. And it's amazing how God works things out because Jerry, I knew right then in just that short brief conversation we had, I want to interview you on the podcast because you've got some things to say that I want our audience, I want firefighters to hear because, hey, firefighters, sometimes the family tree is straight up and down like that telephone pole behind me in the picture here. And we need to hear other leadership
Yeah.
perspectives.
Mhm.
And so we connected right then and there. And so, Jerry, you reached back out a couple days later and said, "Hey, after the Live to Lead, we joined the Maxwell team."
Right, right. We were actually, truth is, your conversation with us
Wow.
made my wife and I decide you inspired us, and we were sitting there, and with all the things we're done, we were like, he's right. He says some things. We should really do this. We should really do this. And then we went and we did it, and I'm so excited about it. I really am.
Yeah, that's great. And folks, the Maxwell leadership team is great. We have fantastic resources. And Jerry, something funny happened this weekend. I was at a business conference in Denver
Mhm.
Friday and Saturday, and I had that little binder that they gave us at the IMC said Maxwell leadership on it. And I was sitting with another Marine on Friday. We come in
Mhm.
Saturday morning and somebody's taking our seats. And so, well, we found someplace else to sit. And a guy comes and he sits down next to me and he sees my folder and he said, "Are you part of the Maxwell team?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "Oh," he said, "I know Chris Robinson." I said, "Well, how do you know
Wow.
him?" And he says, "We grew up together."
Wow.
I said,
Yes.
"Well, that comes into the small world department
It,
thing right
Chris
there."
has I've been reading Chris's new book, From Drift to Drive.
It's a fantastic book. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
fantastic book, folks. Chris Robinson, we interviewed him, and that aired on September the 25th. And I've heard some really good feedback from that interview. Chris is, for a lot of people who are in positions that Chris is in, he's the executive vice president of the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team. Yeah, you look at a lot of people who are involved in positions like that, and they come across as untouchable. Not Chris, not Chris Robinson. He's just down the earth man, just absolutely down the earth. Get his book, read his book, look up Jerry. So Jerry, as we wrap this up, is there anything you'd like to add?
I always like to end something inspirational. I want to remind everyone who's listening that you were created to be great. You were created to do something to bring value to the world. It takes time to find it, but you should take every effort you can to find it.
Hmm.
I'm reminded of my favorite scripture in the Bible, Rick, is Proverbs 19:21, when it says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's only God's purpose that will prevail."
Yeah,
Who we
that's
are and
great.
what we are is why we're here.
Hmm.
You have to figure that thing out, whether it's resiliency, whether it's strength, whatever you need to learn along the way. God knows that you need it in order for you to be in the position that He wants you to be finished.
Yeah.
I would encourage all of you to not run away from difficult times. I've had failures. I know you have had some, Rick. I've had
Mm.
failures,
Yep.
but it's okay. As long, Les, Les Brown said this, Rick. He says, it's okay if you fall, as long as you fall on your back so you can see your way back up.
Mm. Yeah. That's good.
It's important that we recognize that we're built for more and that God has created us to do something well. And my prayer and my hope from this amazing interview that we've had, Rick, that your people find inspiration, motivation, that they desire purpose, and that they're inspired to do something great to bring value to the world. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Jerry. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. How do people find you? How can they get your book? How can they learn more about your coaching services?
You can find out about me. You can find my books on Amazon. You can look up Jerry L. Maclin. You can also, if you want to get in contact with me for coaching and so on, my website is www.thescension.coach. You can find that. We're actually going the process of updating it right now. But also, I have a YouTube channel. My wife and I do Christian teachings multiple times a week. We've started this thing called the Ascension Network, and you can find that on YouTube. And pretty soon, Rick, I'm going to be doing the Ascension Coach channel.
Mm.
And I would be honored, and I think I've already asked you if you would come and allow me to interview you.
Oh, I'd love it.
And so that's what we're doing. All of this is the direction we're headed in. And so you can find me all those places. I'm not on Instagram. People keep telling me I should get on Instagram. Um, I used to be years and years ago,
Yeah.
but maybe I'll get on Instagram. But that's where you can reach out to me at.
Yeah, well, that's great. And folks, when you're looking for Jerry's books on Amazon, his last name is spelled Maclin.
Like,
Yeah,
let me
yeah,
guess,
yeah.
you did the Irish version, you did the MCC. Did you do
No,
that?
yeah, yeah. You might say, I think even if you spelled his name wrong, you'd probably Amazon would probably take you to the right place. But hey, folks, that's it. That's it. Jerry, thank you very much. It's been a
Thank you for
pleasure
having me.
talking to you here today and listening to what you have had to say. And I know that you have added value to our audience. And folks, if you have liked this, please like it. Please subscribe. My contact information is in the show notes and also information about my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development. My weekly leadership blog is posted on LinkedIn on Wednesday mornings at 0500. And then I also post that on my website that comes up. And by the way, Jerry, I still roll out of the rack at 0430 in the morning.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
All right.
That's
Okay,
beautiful.
folks. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye bye, everybody.